Good afternoon and welcome back to the final session of the inaugural Women's Health Expo. My name is Georgie Dent and I have been delighted to be the MC today. And it is my absolute pleasure to introduce the final panel today for a discussion around maintaining good health later in life. Your facilitator for this panel discussion is Danica Leys, who is the Chief Executive Officer of the Country Women's Association for New South Wales and a member for the New South Wales Council for Women's Economic Opportunities. So I'm going to hand over to Danica, but before I do that, I will just like to introduce that the panellists today, we have got Karen Price from ACON, we've got Professor Diane Fatkin, sorry, I've just got from the Victor Chang Cardiac Research Institute, and we have got Jeanette Hales-Michelmore again, who will be joining us online from the Jean Hales Foundation. So, Danica.
Thank you so much, Georgie, and thanks to all of you for sticking by us for the last panel session of the day. And hello to everyone watching online as well, and hi there, Janet, can see you online.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well, thank you. I thought we might kick off with just a general question. This is a great panel about a panel discussion about health concerns, just more generally later into life, as well as some proactive comments and advice around what we can do to help ourselves, what we can do to help those in our community and those that we love. So perhaps I might just go through all the panellists and kick off with a question around what each of you think some of the key elements for positive health and wellbeing as women move into later stages of life are. And perhaps also, we were talking off stage before, and Karen, you might like to answer this too, the type of audience that we think about when we're talking about, health care for women. So if you want to take it away, thank you.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I'd just like to thank Women of New South Wales for putting today on and all the panellists and speakers and presenters, acknowledge the traditional owners and really just thank people for, coming to yet another Zoom meeting if you're online or indeed coming face to face. It's a tribute to you all that you've stayed here for the last session, and this is the highlight. You're actually going to be rewarded. So look, I think I'll rattle through a few quick points because we've got a lot to say, but ultimately women are more than the sum of their parts, right? So when we talk about women in our communities, we aren't just imagining a person who's probably married to a fellow, who might have had a few children, living that sort of trajectory of a life. Lots of things happen to us all as we age and become ourselves and get older and work out who we are on our journeys. So I guess ACON is New South Wales' leading LGBTQ community organisation. We run programs statewide and also nationally. And we've seen over the last, ACON's around been around 4 decades, and in that time we've seen a lot of change, a lot more inclusion and diversity and acceptance of communities, all sorts of people in our communities. With that comes kind of a necessity to think about our health messaging and who is included and excluded and how much people have to be relied upon to read themselves into messaging. We've heard a lot today about, absolutely as we should, breast cervical and bowel screening, and that's really, they are 3 really important issues, and we're going to hear a lot more about health, heart health today. The parts of our bodies that require attention don't always line up with our identities, and I know that's a hard thing to get your head around sometimes. So ACON's been working very closely with the Cancer Institute New South Wales to do some really groundbreaking work around breast, cervical and bowel screening. Breast screening in particular, when you think about breasts, you think about a cisgendered woman over 50, and they're very happy to go walk into the pink bus, and we are very blessed to have such free and great services. But not everyone with breasts who needs breast screening can do that. So we need to think about that more broad messaging. Also, not everyone with breasts who are cisgendered women in our communities of a certain age really treasure that kind of part of their body. It's not a part they want to really take care of or identify with. Again, it can take a while to get your head around that. So community support is really crucial for that. So we have a campaign called Our United Front, which invites people to join together, support each other to do that. So it's about taking care of each other, which is something LGBT communities know a lot about. And part of taking care of each other is to encourage us to do that. The same thing with bowel screening, our latest campaign, which is very diverse and joyful and involves 1980s aerobic exercise vibe, lycra, is about not making an excuse, and getting your kit together could remind you of a different phrase about getting yourself organised and not putting it off. So these sorts of messages really directly target, they have visuals that are diverse, and we are inviting people who don't necessarily read themselves into other campaigns or messaging that doesn't look like or reflect their life or their journey. And I think, you know, like I said before earlier about some of the conversations about diversity, you know, it's a critical message for us not to leave any women behind in that messaging, and that means people who have anatomies, you know, breasts, vaginas, etc., who don't identify as women, and those things like screening for cervical screening and other things still need to happen, and it's a really critical part of what we're wanting to talk about today.
Absolutely agree. Diane, along the same vein, that question, but perhaps, you know, putting your area of expertise in your answer. So the question was about, you know, what do you think some of those key elements around good health for women as they move into older age are? But as I said, perhaps touching on, some of your background, some of your expertise, and what are some of the misconceptions that are around in relation to heart disease as well?
Thanks very much. Because heart disease is something that a lot of women just don't even think about. But in actual fact, women are 3 times more likely to die of heart disease than they are to die of cancer, which is something that people don't often think about. Because I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that heart disease is a man thing. And if you read the newspapers, and everybody in the world must have seen that Shane Warne's had a heart attack, it sort of focuses this whole thing about coronary artery disease being something that affects middle-aged men. But that's not necessarily the case. You know, there's so much awareness about heart attacks in men, and people know that if you've got a central chest tightness, or you feel like a heaviness on the chest, and you're a middle-aged man who's overweight and a smoker and got hypertension, you know, that's the sort of typical person that people associate with heart disease. But in fact, heart disease is a real issue. And some of the reasons why women don't appreciate this is because the symptoms are often quite different to those of a man. And so a woman might be feeling more tired than usual, feeling shortness of breath, palpitations, some of these other symptoms, and they're often just overlooked. And so part of the problem with women and heart attacks is that people don't appreciate that they're having a problem. They don't seek medical attention early because they don't think they've got a problem, or because, you know, they're too busy looking after the family and they haven't got time to look after themselves, and, you know, I've got to pick up the kids, I haven't got time to worry about my own palpitations, it's nothing. And so the sad state of affairs is a lot of women present late when they have heart attacks, and their outcomes aren't quite so good. So there's an awareness of symptoms, an awareness that heart disease can be a problem. But then another of the misconceptions is that it is all about lifestyle. So the first thing I mentioned was that we're talking about a middle-aged man with hypertension. And so a lot of people think that if they do all the right things, they'll still be protected. But then, of course, we've got the role of genetics. So I'm thinking about somebody who's in coronary care, who's a really great person who's done all the right things, had all the right diet, exercised, you know, had their blood pressure checked annually, had their cholesterol checked annually, and they're still in coronary care with a heart attack. And then you take a family history, and this 35-year-old person who's in coronary care actually has a very strong family history. So we have to bear in mind that it's not necessarily all about the lifestyle. The genetics does play an important role. So again, if women recognise that there's a family history of disease, it's very important to work on your risk factors, because you can't necessarily change your genetics, but you can change your lifestyle. So the other misconception that I think is really important is that heart disease only affects older people. And to really sort of address this question, I think we need to remind ourselves that there's a lot of different types of heart disease, that we're not just talking about hardening of the arteries and heart attacks, but heart failure due to heart muscle disease is a very important problem, and heart rhythm problems and heart valve problems, and there's all sorts of other problems that can affect the heart over and above just hardening of the arteries and coronary artery disease. And heart failure is one of the things that I deal with a lot, and this is where the pumping action of the heart gets weak, and people often need heart transplants if it gets to the end stage. And one of the big misconceptions, particularly for young women with heart failure, is that they go to the GP with shortness of breath and swelling of the ankles, and they're told it's hormonal, or well, you just get ankle swelling, you know, in hot weather, and the shortness of breath is just put down to a bit of asthma. And I can't tell you how many young women have had years of misdiagnosis because of the preconception that heart failure is not something that young women have. So I think, just to summarise these few points, it's all about awareness that heart disease can affect women. It's important to sort of seek care as soon as possible if you've got symptoms. But the other thing that is really critical all throughout a woman's life, and particularly as we get older, is the heart-healthy lifestyle. And I'm a big fan of the heart-healthy lifestyle, and everybody who comes to see me in my practice gets told about the heart-healthy lifestyle. So I think we need to empower ourselves to do whatever we can to reduce the risk of heart disease. So we're talking about regular exercise, keeping a healthy weight, getting your blood pressure and cholesterol checked, not drinking too much, and not smoking. So I think if we're all aware of what the ingredients are of a heart-healthy lifestyle are, then that's the best thing we can do all through our lives to protect ourselves from all sorts of heart disease and cancer and all sorts of other diseases as well.
Thank you, Diane. Janet, I can see you nodding in agreement there. You might like to pick up on some of those themes as well. And I realise you probably touched on some of this in the last panel, but just reinforce what some of those regular checkups that women should be aware of that they should be getting as they age.
Well, I do want to pick up on several of the things that have been brought up already. One is I'm one of those people in the lottery that drew some cruddy genes. So I've got a very strong history of cardiovascular disease in my family. But despite that, and this is where I'd really encourage women to either seek a second opinion or to stand up for themselves. I once appeared at a major hospital in Melbourne with chest pain and shortness of breath, age 62. And do you know what I was told? To sit and read a magazine. The new ideas were there, so that was good. And I'd be seen later when they had time. A 62-year-old woman with a family history of cardiovascular disease, I don't think should be ignored. So please, if you're one of those people who've got the poor lottery in the gene department, speak up for yourself. The second that I want to pick up on is we do a survey every year at Jean Hales, and the key questions that women want more information on is what sort of physical activity, what should they be eating, and they all talk about stress. And I just want to touch quickly on the physical activity and what people should be eating. Certainly with physical activity, we have this view that unless you're a marathon runner, unless you're in Lycra the whole time, you're not doing what you should be doing. And there have been two experts that have come out very strongly in the last 12 months. One is Professor Cassandra Zerke in Melbourne, and Flavia Cicchettini, and said, interestingly, in Cassandra's research, she's talked about the fact that the people who are best, and this is her midlife women's health study, the people who do best are those that do consistently a little every day. And by a little, she's talking about 30 minutes. So it's not running a marathon, it's not pumping iron in the gym for an hour each day, but that consistency, and I can't look anyone in the eye and say, I'm as consistent as every day, but it is that consistency. And they are the people who do very much better. The other thing is, Flavia Cicchettini talks about how much exercise, just a little bit more. So I think we're all under pressure and we feel quite guilty when we aren't doing what we think is the right amount of exercise. Flavia's advice is, if you're walking 100 metres today, next week make it 150, and you'll find as you gradually go up, you will continue to go up in the amount of exercise. I think it's all about being able to keep on doing it. It's the sustainability nature of physical activity, and it's also the incidental activity, be it gardening, be it walking, etc., to pick up kids, and that's the important thing that we should remember. The other is about what should we be eating, and there's a Harvard University study that's recently been published about the rainbow diet, which is very related to the Mediterranean diet, which I know is very good for hearts. But this is about including at each meal a brightly coloured fruit or vegetable. So if you look at breakfast, it could be tomatoes and spinach. If you look at mid-morning, it could be a brightly coloured apple or pear, blue grapes instead of green grapes. At lunch, it could be more darker leafed lettuces, etc. And at night is huge opportunities with baked sweet potato, baked red onions, baked peppers, etc., or grated carrot or grated beetroot. So there are all sorts of things that we know women want to know, and they're quite easy to incorporate into your daily diet. And then the last is emotional well-being. We know women have taken a hefty knock over the last 2 years, and for a variety of reasons, be it the sandwich generation, be it that they've been homeschooling. And a couple of tips that we give women, and one of my ones that I really want to stress, is to be kinder to yourself. You don't have to get it right all of the time. You don't have to make sure that everyone's super happy. And the other one is the ability to say no. Sometimes we keep on pushing ourselves and keep on saying yes to people, when actually no one's going to hate you if you say no. So in those three categories of physical activity, what's your food, your health is on your plate, and then the last, which is your emotional well-being. They're the tips that we give women, particularly at midlife and beyond.
Thank you, Janet. We'll turn to audience questions soon. So if you've got any questions, now's the time to sort of think them up, and we'll get the microphone to you. Does anyone have any burning questions straight away?
Can I just add something before that? And while people are thinking of their burning question, just want to pick up on two things. The Jean Hale survey is very important. I'd love to see the data sets in that broadened out so we can actually understand more about LGBTQ people in that survey. We've had a few interactions before. Data collection for our communities is missing for a whole bunch of health issues, and if we were to do better at cutting up that information into different populations, not just LGBTQ people, but more intersections of our communities, people with migrant refugee backgrounds, people who may not be able to afford to do some of the things that we recommend because access and money and things. So just a shout out to the Jean Hales Foundation on that one. But two things.
I'm so glad you raised that.
So we can talk more about this offline. Obviously, it's exciting. But the other thing to say around emotional wellbeing, and I really just want to back you in on that, and this is something that ACON's really aware of with a lot of older people, older women, sometimes living alone, more socially isolated. That is a real silent killer, I think. It's mental health problems. It's about, you aren't going to be as healthy if you don't have maybe someone encouraging you to get out and about. So ACON has a project called the Love Project. It's living older, visibly engaged. we love a acronym or a pun at ACON, and it's about healthy, active and social lives. And that connection and community connection does keep a lot of our communities healthier and more supported, less alone, less isolated, and it's really critical. And we've backed that in with a group called Silver Sessions, which is running and I'll shout out to the City of Sydney for helping us with that. And that is basically it's a 6-week program, roughly, where we have really specific topics that we cover off with women. And it's the stuff we were talking about all day around stuff that's a bit stigmatising, the stuff that's a bit hard to bring up. We run that program and we bring women together in a safe place so they actually can talk about that stuff and have guest speakers, everything from economic security and housing security through to all those other things we're talking about, good health and exercise. And we have dance classes, we try and make it fun. It's a little bit of the unicorn you mentioned earlier today. People who don't necessarily fit into other spaces coming together and feeling like they actually belong. So that emotional wellbeing, social connectedness is a foundational element to health. And unless we, I think, support that stuff in amongst all the other, like the long list of things we have to pay attention to have good health, in amongst work and all the things that we have to do. And as we get older, all of these things become harder. It's a collective effort sometimes, and I feel like the programs like Silver Sessions and Love really do focus our attention and help people navigate the trickiness of becoming older, less capable, perhaps afraid of what lies ahead of them.
I love that. I love those ideas, and it's such a critical point that you've all of you have pretty much made about that. The interconnectedness between emotional well-being and our physical well-being, and that they're not really two separate things that require treatment. We have a similar campaign in the CWA world called the Conversations.
I love that.
Which we and it really does focus on the importance of being connected and reducing loneliness and increasing those moments that people can be connected to.
Which is
each other.
particularly important in rural and regional
Absolutely.
areas, right?
Yeah, that's right. Any questions for anyone at this point? Yes, have a friend.
How do you find out about these programs? Like, how do you find out about these programs? Like, how would people normally find out through? Do you have a website?
We do, yeah,
Okay.
acon.org.au. Our programs are on there, they're under category headings. I think ageing is on there, so you should be able to find us on the ACON website. We're talking and joking with the event organiser, who I can't see here, Helen, I think her name is, about how we can go viral on social media. But we are on social media, you can follow us. We've got ACON Here for Women, we've got Can We, which is a cancer brand. We've got ACON General Comms as well. So if you're into social media and you know how to do that, please look us up. Or just, if you really needed to, just drop an email into our contact us email and it'll navigate its way to the right person. So please reach out. ACON is, so we used to be, back in the day, back in 1985, we were called the AIDS Council of New South Wales. So that's when HIV first was diagnosed and was killing hundreds and thousands of people. Due to the advancements in treatment of HIV, AIDS is no longer really an issue anymore, which is great. But HIV is still with us and hundreds get diagnosed every year. But ACON started in that early age of HIV/AIDS. We are a much broader organisation now. We cover off, we're in the mental health, drug and alcohol space. We're in domestic and family violence support and anti-violence. We're in cancer screening and prevention with our Can We brand, canwe.org.au. We've got a range of different programs, and some of them are national. Pride in sport, pride in health and wellbeing, pride in diversity. They're all about trying to, ultimately our communities do better when we're less stigmatised, less discriminated against, feeling part of our workplaces, part of our communities. So these are all programs that are kind of aiming at those basics. Like I said, the foundations for health are feeling like you belong, you know where to access support, you come together as a community, you support each other. A lot of our programs are a bit like that. Health promotion.
Thank you. Diane, I just had a specific question for you, just turning to your area of expertise. You're talking about the misconceptions of heart disease and what are some of the things that, I think we're starting to get more educated about, what we should do if we actually feel or observe some of these symptoms. But as a wider community or as an observer, like what are some of the things we should be looking for? And, you know, one of the things that struck me, particularly even within the CWA community is, you know, we have defibrillators, for instance, in a lot of our community halls, but often it's not really well known by the wider community, like when is the appropriate time to step in and use it. And I appreciate that's kind of like a, you know, an emergency situation, but like how can the wider community actually become more aware of what they should and could do to help someone?
Well, that's a really important point actually, because sudden cardiac death is a real issue, and you've got seconds to respond. You know, if a person doesn't get effective cardiopulmonary massage within a minute, then it's likely that the brain will not survive. So it's, given how important this problem is, it's kind of amazing the small number of people who really have any idea at all how to do cardiopulmonary massage, let alone know how to use a defibrillator and when to use a defibrillator. So I guess our whole community would benefit from awareness programs, and there are countries around, or places around the world, like in Seattle, for example, they had a big community program to try and get people to be aware of a cardiac arrest situation and how to assess the situation and at least administer CPR. So this is actually an area of need where, as a community, we could really benefit from more information. And at the individual level, I'm sure there are people who are interested would be able to sign up for St John's ambulance courses and different things like this.
Wonderful, thank you.
But just to follow up this lady's question about where to find out information, the Victor Chang Cardiac Research Institute actually has a very good website for a lot of heart-related health issues. So that's another place that you can look at if you're looking for more information.
Thank you. Now I think we're probably getting pretty close to time, are we, Georgie? There might be time for one more question if anyone has a question or comment that they'd like to make. No?
Karen, can I just thank you for raising the survey issue?
Yep.
And our survey is being launched at the end of the week, and for the first time it's going to be translated into Arabic, Chinese and Vietnamese, and we're having a very strong push with other priority populations. So thank you for raising it, and please, at the end of this week, log on to jeanhales.org.au and you will be able to do the survey, and I look forward to talking to you about it.
Perfect.
Thank you, Janet. Georgie.
Oh, thank you so much, panellists and Danica, for that excellent session. That actually does now conclude the panel sessions. There is one remaining workshop that's happening here immediately after this session. But I would like to take this opportunity to thank you all, particularly to the live streaming audience. Thank you for joining us today. I hope that you have found the day as useful and sort of empowering as I have, certainly. I feel very fortunate to have been here and have heard from all of these people. So, and I would also like to thank all of the team behind the scenes that has brought this incredible event together. Pulling something off like this is no small feat, and particularly when you've got a pandemic and there's the online and there's the real life. So I think it's been a fantastic day, and I've really enjoyed the opportunity to be here and to help facilitate some of this day. So thank you very much.